right, wow, family, pay attention and listen up, because what I'm about to talk about, it's something that I believe the majority of you guys should be listening to. And here's the question that I'm going to pose to you right now. What if I told you that building wealth isn't rocket science? Would you believe me? Right? Here's something that I have learned, and I'm going to do a reaction video to Valuetainment's latest video. And the reason I'm going to be presenting this is because, when was this? In 1988, I took a financial class in which the instructor teaching that class gave me these exact same principles, and it changed my life. And I hope if you are watching this video, these 8 principles will change your life, right? Here's something that is true across the board, and you can get this from the labor, and PBD is going to talk about it, where you can get these stats from the labor statistics, and we're going to watch that in a second. But here's what's important. It doesn't matter if you're a millionaire, a billionaire, a business owner, or even an e-bike hustler like me, right? Today, you have the ability to build massive wealth, but you have to follow these 8 principles, right? So I'm going to be reacting to Valuetainment's latest video, like I mentioned, on how the rich build their wealth, and I'll break it down into 8 principles, and I'll show you how I have done it, and so it's relatable to this channel. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to make a correlation between the e-bikes that I have invested in and that I ride in, that I love, and how I and you can follow these principles with an e-bike link to build the wealth that I believe that everyone can. But again, as I mentioned, it's going to be heavily dependent on what stage of life you're in. Now, for those of you that are my age, can you still do this? Yes, but it's going to be very difficult, and I'm going to tell you why. Because principle number 1 is time, right? Time is your superpower. I was 18 years old when I took that class, people. I was a very young Marine with absolutely no money. In fact, when I left my house at 18 to go to boot camp, I left with just a toothbrush in my pocket. And the main reason why I joined the Marine Corps was because I had really felt at that particular time I had no future. I had applied to only one university because my grades weren't great. I didn't get accepted, and I did not want to end up like everyone else on the island that I knew. I didn't want to be that person. And my out at the time was the Marine Corps. Best thing that ever happened to me. Best thing that ever happened. So let's watch the first segment of this video so you can start to understand what we're going to be talking about in this video.
So here's what you're looking at. To be in the top 10%, there's 13 million Americans that are in the top 10%. That net worth is roughly $1.6 million, and the average age of somebody in the top 10% is 56 years old. Top 1%, 1.3 million, average net worth $11 to $13 million, average age 62 years old. 0.1%, only 130,000, $60 million net worth, 65 years old. 0.01% is 13,000 people, average net worth is $227 million, age 67 years old, and we have roughly 1,135 people in the top 0.001%. To be in that category, your net worth is $1 billion and the average age is 70 years old. So when you look at this, you see one pattern. What's the pattern? Everybody is above 56 years old who is in the top 10%, the top 1%, 60 plus. Now, what are the 5 ways on how they make their money? Number 1 way that they create their wealth.
Okay, we're going to go into that in a second, but I want to emphasize the importance of time, right? And I'll use myself as an example, right? I started with absolutely nothing, like I mentioned. I left my house at 18 years old with a toothbrush in my pocket. But it was, and for for a very long time, all through my 20s and through my mid 30s. Man, it was a grind, people. It was working my ass off, saving money, making the right decisions. I'm going to go into that in a second. But wealth is built over decades, people, and you got to have patience. And that's where I think a lot of you guys lack, right? You don't have patience. You want shit to happen now. I've always said that a lot of people live in that microwave, with that microwave mentality. They want that shit instant. Life doesn't work that way, people. It just doesn't work that way. And if you look at those numbers, look at the statistics that PPD mentioned, the average age of millionaires is around 56 years old. Guess what? I'm 56, right? That's the age. This is one of the reasons why I really resonated with this video, because when I watched the video, I had clear, vivid memories of sitting down in Camp Pendleton, California, listening to that gunnery sergeant explaining to me how to write a check, how to open a savings account, how to open a checking account, how to balance my checkbook, and how to and teaching us the principles of building wealth long term. Right? Here's your ebike link. Right? And I've talked about this on a couple other videos, right? It's just like saving on gas every single ride. That stuff adds up. It may seem very insignificant right now, right? If you start trading some of the stuff you do in a car with an e-bike, it may be very insignificant in the beginning, but compound that through time, right? So let's look at it in a couple of years. You're talking about if let's say if you only replace your car for 50% of the stuff you do, and you're gonna have to figure out that number. I did a video where I figured out the numbers, but every mile you ride on your e-bike instead of on the car, you're saving money on gas, saving money on maintenance. And over years, that's thousands of dollars you're saving in gas and maintenance that you can redirect to do what? To invest, right? I'm gonna say that again. You're going to have the ability to redirect some money to invest in. Now, some of you may be in debt. Highly recommend that you redirect those savings to paying off your debt. But that's just one example. Let's listen to PBD as he talks about how the most millionaires make their money, right?
In business is business ownership. 45 to 50%, they created their wealth in business ownership, entrepreneurship. I started a business, I grew it. On paper, I'm worth $200 million. I sell my business for $600 million. I own 30% of it. I get $180 million. I pay 23.9% taxes on it. I end up keeping somewhere around $140-something million. I'm worth $140 million.
I want to dive deep into what I refer to as the triplet, right? Business, frugality, and investing. It's actually principle number 2, but there's 3 within principle number 2, right? Most wealthy people build equity through business and real estate, right? And I take the real estate separate from actual investing. And there's a reason why, but understand that most millionaires become wealthy through real estate and or businesses. Now, you don't have to own a business to become a millionaire. I know plenty, I've said this multiple times in other videos, but I personally know people that make $50,000 to $60,000 a year that today are a millionaire, but they did the right things, right? They invested right. They bought properties they bought the right properties. So you don't really need to have a really high earning W-2 job to build wealth. Because at the same token, I know people that are CEOs and make 8 figures and live paycheck to paycheck, right? So it's really not how much money you make, it's what you do with the money you make and how much of that you actually keep. So keep that in mind. Here's your e-bike link, right? Your e-bike hustle. This channel, the Watt Hustle channel, is exactly about that, right? Saving money and making money, right? So I highly recommend you figure out a side hustle if you're not operating a business. If you have a W-2 job, you're going to be working from 9 to 5. That's 8 hours, right? Some of you may work 10 hours with 3 days off, but you have plenty of time to either have a side hustle or start creating a business, right? Now, with the caveat that I'm a firm believer that not everyone can be a business owner. You need to understand that. You can run a business, but you need to make sure that if you are not what I refer to as a business owner, then you need to hire someone that has that business owner mentality to run the business. But you can be, whatever it is, whatever skill you have, you can capitalize on that skill. We're going to talk about that in a little bit in this video. But as it relates to the e-bike, your e-bike hustle is a business. If you're dashing on it, right? If you're using it to make money, if you're buying e-bikes like I do to either flip or to either rent, then that is a business, people. And you need to treat that like a business and be a business owner. And here's the beauty about it, right? You decide when and how to ride if you're going to be doing it as riding, right? So living the frugality part is also very, very important. And that is living below your means. You have to live below your means because you need to be able to save what you earn. I can tell you that I've been blessed throughout my life because that's one of the key principles that I learned early on, that 20% of what I made, I don't care what it is. If someone gives me $1, I take 20 cents out of that dollar and I save it. If someone gives me $100, right, I take 20% of that and I save it. I don't care what comes in, I pay myself first by taking 20% of that and putting it away. And the rest you can do whatever you want to do with it, right? Pay your bills, do whatever the heck you want, but you have to pay yourself up first. And that's hugely important. Keeping that in mind, you also have to remember you can't pay yourself but borrow money and max out your credit cards, because that doesn't work, right? So choosing the bike, I'm going to go back again about a bike. Choosing the bike over a car, if you can get away with it. Now I can hear people, in their talking to themselves now or talking to somebody else and saying, this guy's freaking crazy. I am not trading my car for an e-bike. Some of you probably can't 100% do that, but some of you can 1000% do that. Listen, if you watch the PBD podcast, there's a guy on that podcast called, his first name is Adam Sosnick, right? Last name Sosnick. But Adam doesn't own a car. The guy is a millionaire, doesn't own a car, right? He believes, just like I believe, a car is a waste of money. A lot of you waste tons of money. In fact, and I don't know if it's true today, but when I took this financial class, one of the questions that they asked all of us was, what in your lifetime, what's going to be the biggest expense you're going to have in your lifetime? Now, back then, again, I don't know if that's the case today, because today may be a couple of other things, but for sure it's going to be in the top 3. The biggest expense you're going to have in your lifetime is a car. Here's why. Most people change their cars every 3 to 5 years. The maximum is 5 years. There's a book that was written in about Warren Buffett, and one of the things that Warren Buffett has always stated is, number 1, never buy a new car, right? Number 2, keep your car for at least 10 years. And so in your lifetime, you're only going to have a handful of cars. You're not going to have a lot. But today, I know people that are in their 30s and have had a minimum 10 cars, right? And they're in their freaking 30s. That's a lot of cars. It's a lot of car payments. That's insurance. Insurance is skyrocket high, right? An e-bike doesn't have any of that, right? You're not registering it. You're not paying insurance on it. The entry point on an e-bike is very low. You can do just about everything you can do in a car on an e-bike if you get the correct e-bike. I've done videos on it, so I'm not going to get into it, but there's way to do it. In addition to that, I kind of talked about it. If you're looking for a side hustle, delivering using these apps to make money on your bike is a huge plus. Because let's say you have to buy the bike. You can pay yourself back by doing some dashing, right? Some Uber Eats, pay yourself back. Rent it out, pay yourself back for the expense of the bike. You can make money. You can make that bike an asset. Very, very important. So remember this. There's two things. I'm gonna go back to time. Time is like riding. Time is like riding daily routes, right? One trip at a time saves you money on fuel and maintenance, right? In terms of saving money, at one trip at a time, again, it's going to save you money. And if you turn that bike into an asset, it's a mobile business for you. Very low overhead. Now, let's go into the other thing that PBD talks about here in this video.
So number two is investment and capital gains. That's roughly 25 to 30% of people. This is when you hear stats when they say the top 1% owns more than half of equities in America, real estate, stocks, private equity. That's how they make their money. Number three is savings and retirement. This is 10 to 15%, 401k. You put your 403b, mutual funds, Roth.
But you have to save your money and you have to invest it, right? And I don't care where you invested in, but you just have to invest.
I started kind of going through it for myself. Here's what I realized. As I'm coming up in business, and I've been fortunate enough to make a good amount of money in my lifetime, number one, the guys who did, for whatever reason, they're long-term thinking.
That's it, long-term thinking. Let's talk about long-term thinking, right? I kind of touched on it earlier. Many of you guys fit into this category. You're impatient. And I'm going to give you an example from how and not me, but even people within my circle and how they are impatient, right? I grew that business, which is a real estate and asset management company. And I invested in real estate. Because of what my circle saw me do and build and how they when I was starting into this, they would tell me I was crazy. You shouldn't buy that. Don't buy that piece of property. That piece of property is a piece of crap. Don't buy this property. That property needs too much work, right? But when they realized 5-6 years later how wealthy I became, now they wanted to get into the game, right? So I gave them strategies, what to do, right? I can't tell you how many people bought properties, but because that property was only making them $300 or $400, they didn't think it was worth it and they sold, right? Huge mistake. And here's how I want you to think about investing, especially if you're thinking about investing in real estate, right? As long as that investment isn't taking money out of your pocket, who cares if it's only making you $100? It's $100 that you didn't have. It's $100 that you haven't worked for, technically. $100 that is passive, right? But again, I'm gonna go back to the patient part of it and having that long-term thinking aspect that you must have if you're going to do this, is because that property, they bought 1 or 2 properties, and because they didn't turn into millionaires with their first year, they're like, oh, this shit doesn't work. No, people, relax. It takes 5 or 6 years. Let's look back. So I'm gonna give you 2 examples. 2 guys that I got into investing properties, both sold their properties. Both purchased their properties. One purchased it for $210,000. The other one purchased for $225,000. Both properties were duplexes in Fort Lauderdale. This was in 2000. 2015 and no, I take it back. It was 2000. It was right after COVID. So let's say 2020 and 2021. They sold their properties in 2023. In 2000 and last year, 2024, both those properties jumped by almost 60% in value. Those properties today are worth over $500,000, those properties today. If they kept it, they would have doubled their money. And today, the rents are much higher than they were back when they had it. And they would have been, instead of that $200 or $300 they were making, they'll be making $1,000 for those properties for each unit today. Big difference, but it takes time, right? It takes time. So here's when it comes to long-term thinking, the wealthy, they don't just think about today, they don't think about next week, they don't think about next month. They think about 10 years from now, right? They think about 20 years from now. That's what they're thinking. That's hugely important. And here's your e-bike link. With hustling on this bike. So just think about today's delivery pay. Think long-term. How can this hustle fund an investment? Already talked about that. Again, I'll use myself as an example. DoorDash. I go out there and hustle, and I do it for three primary reasons. Number one reason is because I love riding my bike. And if I'm going to ride my bike and if I'm going to take 2 to 3 hours out of my day, I might as well get a financial benefit from it in addition to a health benefit. I'll touch on the health benefit in a second. That's why I dash. If I'm going to go to the beach, I'm going to go on the app. When I get to the beach, instead of riding around aimlessly, I'm going to dash. I'm going to see the same thing, but I'm going to make a few bucks here and there. I take that money and I reinvest it in my business. I reinvested in this channel. I reinvested in paying my staff. I take that money and I don't spend that money on buying stupid shit that I'm not going to need. I take that money and I reinvest it, because by reinvesting it into my business, I'm growing my business that 5, 6, 10, 15 years down the road, my business is going to have a crap load of equity, right? So think about that. Every ride today is going to pay for something tomorrow. Keep that in mind. Every time you get on that bike today, you ride, either hustle or you substitute your car for that, that's paying for something tomorrow, right? There's a saying that I love. Hold on, let me try to get this back. There's a saying that I loved that I learned early on in my career that I keep it as today. It's something that I taught my son early on. And there's different versions of it, but and I firmly believe this. What you do today will 1000% affect your tomorrow. It can affect it in a good way or it can affect it in a bad way. So for example, we'll talk about finances. Every penny you save today, it's going to pay you and then some tomorrow. Let's talk about health. Every time you either eat healthy or eat bad, it's going to show up tomorrow. Trust me, it's going to show up tomorrow, right? It's either going to show up by you gaining weight, or it's going to show up by your lab work not looking good, or the opposite. It's going to show up by you losing weight or show up by your lab work looking phenomenal, right? Keep that in mind. Let's move on to the next topic here that PBD talks about.
They don't sit there and go impatient. Oh my God, I need it right now. Didn't work out, quick, go to the next one. Oh my God, I need it right now. Boom, next. Oh my God, there's one. Boom, next thing. No, they understand your best friend is momentum. And when you have momentum, you know what you look like? You look like a mythical figure. Elon right now is worth $460 billion. And then all of a sudden you hear about Larry Ellison, which is one of Elon Musk's closest allies, who invested, I think, $2 billion in Tesla. He made $100 billion in a day. How does that happen? Did he do something today? No. It's long-term thinking. Momentum eventually caught up and money becomes easier to make long-term. Number two, a strong network. Somehow, some ways, They get in rooms and they build good relationships. They go from this door to that door to the next door to the next door, and then all of a sudden they're sitting in front of the guy. How did I all of a sudden get in front of him? And what do you do with that relationship? So somehow, some way, they build strong networks.
All right, that's another big one, guys. There's a saying that goes, your net worth equals your net worth. And that is so true. If you know, one of the fastest way to build wealth is through your network, right? To the people you surround yourself with. You also heard the saying, show me, or at least for me, as a kid, and I'm going to say it in English, but there's a translation in Spanish, but my father used to always tell me, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll tell you what your character is, or I'll show you what your future is going to look like, right? By who you surround yourself with. So having a strong network is going to help you tremendously. I'll give you a couple of examples of what I mean by that. I have people in my family that have such a strong network that if they get fired from their job today, they will have another job tomorrow. That simple. All they have to do is pick up a phone because they have the right connections. They have the right people. The other thing is, in terms of your network, if you look at it this way, if you go into a room of the 5 closest friends you have, if you are the richest, the smartest, you're in the wrong room, bro. You should not be the smartest in that room. You should not be the richest in that room. You should be at the bottom if you want to continue to grow. 100%, right? You should not be the smartest. You should not be the richest if you want to continue to grow. So understand how that's important. And here's your e-bike link, right? Networking with an e-bike can get you a lot of things. Like, for example, sponsorships, rental partners, gig work leads. There's so much that with the right group, I'm going to give you a couple of examples, right? With the right group and networking, right? My first sponsorship came as a result of my relationship with another e-bike influencer. Right now I'm talking to an e-bike influencer up in Central Florida. We're going to do some collaboration. He's going to modify my Anioki. He's going to build me a huge battery for my move cam. So that connection that I have with him, time is going to tell whether that was a good connection or a bad connection, but I have a feeling based on what we're currently talking about, it's going to be a net positive for me, right? So again, that is extremely important, guys. Surround yourself with the right people and you're going to accelerate your wealth very, very, very quick. Let's continue to listen to PBD.
They keep them and they find ways to maximize them. Number 3 is specialized knowledge. The more specialized your knowledge is, the more you'll make money. There's typically a couple different ways that guys at the highest level that start companies do well. Those are guys that are extremely product driven. So that's technical. I'm going to build a great product, but they're not the best salespeople. Or incredibly driven, great with people, human nature sales, and they sell their idea to others and they know how to sit down with folks, get them to invest into their company. So it's hardcore people, hardcore product, but generally specialized knowledge. And even if you say sales and people, knowing how to sell and negotiate is a form of specialized.
This is another topic that I've talked a lot, especially on my other channel. On my Dream Vacation channel, I talk a lot about this. And that is the importance of understanding that you can't do it all, right? You can't wear all hats. This is where your network also comes into play, right? But you need to figure out who you are. You need to figure out what you're good at. Focus and double down on what you're good at. Don't try to be a jack of all trades. It really doesn't work. Like, for example, I am very good in sales. I am not very detail orientated when it comes to operations of a business. That's why when I started my company, when I started to grow is when I hired an operations manager, because that wasn't my forte. The moment I had a very good operations manager, my business took off, right? Specializing in that is critical. And I don't really care what area you're going to specialize in, but you have to specialize in something, right? Here's a couple of examples. And I don't remember the book. If I remember it, I'm going to put it in the show notes. But there was a book that talked specifically about how people doing everyday jobs became millionaires because of their expertise and specialization, right? Like, for example, even there was a specific guy that was mentioned in this book. He started off as a janitor in an elementary school, became so obsessed about cleaning products and all that stuff, and he created and started his own cleaning company. The guy's a millionaire, right? Same thing with any area, barbers, personal trainers. It doesn't matter the field. If you can get hyper focused on that particular thing and learn to monetize that thing, you're going to do very, very, very well, right? Specialized knowledge is knowing how to ride, repair, and monetize. I'm going to give you the e-bike link, right? And in the e-bike link is being hyper-focused on the actual bike itself, right? How it runs, how it operates, how to repair it, how to monetize. The big one is how to monetize the e-bike, right? And build on those skills, and you're going to be fine. And let's go on to the next one.
Knowledge. And then number 4 is your relationship with risk, your risk tolerance, the way they dance with risk. Some people can't handle it. You could be in a position where there's so much risk, it's so intense, it's so scary, it's so unbelievably taxing on your mental, emotional state. Oh my God, what are you doing? And people break. And then they realize, I can't handle it, especially in this moment where you have to be a number one in a company, or you have a lot of pressure with certain investments you're making, but they have a very good understanding of risk. And by the way, if you're watching this, you're saying, I'm not a guy that risks, I don't want a lot of risk. Totally understand it. But that is understanding your what? Your risk tolerance. Number 5, how they handle success. And I added one more word.
All right, we're going to talk about how to handle success, humility in a second. Let's go back to risk tolerance. This is an area in which a lot of people struggle. And I think a lot of people get stuck, get comfortable, and they don't want any risk. And I think that's one of the factors that hold people back, right? They don't want to buy that property because they think it's too risky. They don't want to invest in that stock because they think it's too risky. They don't want to change jobs because they think it's too risky. You have to take risk. I'm not saying take super high risk, but you have to take risk. I'm going to give you another example with me. The property that I live on, which is the property that I'm filming this video in, when I bought this property, it was a huge risk. At the time, I really didn't have a lot of money. We on paper, we were good with our 401ks, our deferred comp, my pension. On paper, we were good, but I did not have a lot of cash flow. This property was a shithole. It needed so much work, right? It was a huge risk to purchase this property when I bought it. And those that know me, those that were around during that time, know what I'm talking about. There wasn't a single person, not one, not one person. Even my realtor was trying to get me to not buy the property, right? Which is a first for real estate agents. But he was a good friend of mine. But anyways, even he tried to talk me out of buying this property. But I gotta tell you, this was one of the best investments I ever made. Today, this property puts $10,000 a month in my pocket, right? So it was literally the best investment I ever made, but I took a huge risk. And again, I know a lot of you may not be risk takers, which is fine. You do have to take a risk here and there if you're going to build wealth. You can't be super safe. But safe is not really going to be safe because, it's like a lot of people think a W-2 job is a safe job. I think a W-2 job is the most riskiest thing that anyone could ever make. You are reliant, you are dependent on someone else for your future. For me, that is super risky, right? All right, let's move on. Next one.
How they handle success and humiliation and setback. A lot of times people don't know how to handle success. So what is the difference between these two guys? Success, all of a sudden somebody becomes successful, they go nose high, I'm better than you, you have no clue who you are, and then boom, there's a fall. Or they have a setback before they have a victory, and that humiliation prevents them from getting here. But guess what? To win at the highest level, you're both gonna have, in order to experience a lot of this, you have to be willing to experience a lot of that. Most are not gonna experience it.
That, I think, and I hope you caught that, right? Because I think that is really, really important for you to understand. Wealthy people aren't destroyed by failure. They learn by failures, right? They understand that failure is going to come. Colonel Sanders, the founder of KFC, that guy failed so many times before he became successful. In fact, he became successful, I believe, in his 70s, right? It was, I can't tell you how many times that guy failed. Thomas Edison, all these wealthy people failed over and over again before they actually became successful. You have to understand that, and you can't allow any setbacks to allow you to quit. You cannot have a quitter's mentality. Now, there's a fine balance, right? Because if you start a business venture and 5 years down the road, that business venture isn't making you any money and you're losing money, then you have to reconsider, right? But you have to, there's an evaluation process. I'm not going to go into that on this video, but there is an evaluation process. But understand that failure is part, right? And here's your e-bike link to failure, because I've seen this already, right? For example, on an e-bike, one of the biggest headaches for me is getting a flat tire. You go out there to hustle, you get a flat tire. Next day you go out, you fix it, you repair it. Next day you go out, you get another flat tire. Or the next day you go out and it's raining. Or the next day you go out, something breaks on the bike. People, and there's going to be a lot of you that get so frustrated and say, I quit. I'll go back to that real estate story that I tell you with my two buddies. They were only making $100 to a couple of $100 a month. What really caused one of the guys to sell was that when the AC went out, it cost him $800 to fix the AC. So he just lost $800, the 8 months worth of $100 that he was getting because he had to fix that AC, right? So he couldn't handle those setbacks. You have to weather the storm, people. Here's another thing when it comes to, he talked about humiliation. A lot of you are going to sit there and say, it's beneath me to go out there and DoorDash. It's beneath me to go out there and start a business like bike rentals. If you think that, then stay where you're at, because you're never going to see success like many people see success. Because in the beginning, people are going to think you're crazy. I'm going to go back when I purchased this property. People thought I was dumb. People thought I had no idea what I was doing. People laughed at me when I bought this property. Who's laughing now, right? So you really have to weather the humiliation, the setbacks, the downturns, because you're gonna have ups and downs, and embrace the hustle, right? Because the hustle will bounce you back each and every time. So let's go on to the next one.
There's none of these guys that are all the way at the top. If we want to go through all these guys that we're talking about, what percentage they're in, guess what? Who in here you think's been humiliated more? The 1%, 0.1, 0.01, or 0.001? What do you think it is? Who do you think has the most negative articles written about them? Who do you think's publicly always made fun of? It's these guys. How do they make it? You think they like it? You think they're robots and it doesn't bother them? They eventually realize that there's nothing you can do about it. It is part of the game, and you have to be willing to realize how to deal with this. Very few know how to deal with that. Last but not least, it never gets old. It's my favorite. It's cash, period. I know people that if you paid them $100,000, they were broke. When we were 15 years old and they made $6,000 a year at Burger King, they were broke. When they made $200,000 a year, they were broke. When they all of a sudden made $1 million a year, they were broke. It doesn't matter what you pay them. They're always broke. No matter how much money you pay them, they don't understand the concept of having money.
That's going to be the last one I'm going to address. We're going to talk about the last principle is keeping your money. I've already mentioned that it's not about how much money you make, it's what you do with what you make, and more importantly, how much of that do you actually keep, right? Making money is one thing, but keeping it is a completely different story. So avoid the following, right? Avoid trying to keep up with the Joneses. Avoid a lifestyle that is above your means. Protect your assets. Buy assets, more importantly, right? Buy assets. And then once you made it, here's what's going to be. Once you have money, once you have a good amount of money, here's what's going to be your biggest headache. Is, again, we mentioned it here as part of this, is keeping it and managing your taxes, right? Here's your e-bike link. Saving your gas money is only valuable if you can actually keep it. Saving on the maintenance on your car is only valuable if you can actually keep those savings. Making money on the e-bike by dashing, by doing gig work, it's only going to matter if you reinvest that. If you blow it, if you don't save it, then it's all for naught, and you're going to be 56 years old looking back, seeing that you made hundreds, if not millions of dollars, and have zero to show for it. I'm going to give you my last story of this video. And sadly to say, it's my mother. My mother has made in her lifetime millions of dollars. My mother has owned hair salons. My mother has won big in lottery. But right now, my mother has nothing. She is my dependent because she has nothing. She never invested in real estate, never invested in any stocks or bonds. Because she was always a business owner, didn't manage any of her money wisely. She was one of those people that a dollar came in, that dollar she spent, right? And today, fortunately for her, she has me to take care of her. But you have to ask yourself the question, are you going to have a Fernando David to take care of you when you're elderly if you don't have any money to pay for that care, right? So it's something that I and I'm going to go back to me again. It was one of my biggest driving factors as a teenager, and one of my biggest driving factors in my 20s and 30s. When I left my house, I promised myself that I will never be dependent on anyone. I promised myself that I will never end up like my parents ended up. I promised myself that I will provide for my family, and I will die working even working at McDonald's if I had to accomplish that goal. So this video, I recommend you watch the entire video because I believe Patrick David and the Valuetainment team really nailed it. You know, wealth is a pattern. It's not magic. It's not rocket science. It's not like some people want to say, you know, these people became rich because, you know, they were born with money, right? That is the biggest fallacy. In fact, if you look at the majority of, data tells you everything, right? If you look at the majority of the people that build wealth, the majority of people have done so or have come from either low middle class or even the poverty level. Those are the people, the majority of millionaires today came from that. Most of them did not inherit their money. Most of them, in fact, the ones that inherit their money are the ones that lose it the fastest, right? It's estimated, like the Rockefellers, it took only 3 to 4 generations for them to lose it all, right? So understand that, understand these principles that I just talked about. It really is a mindset that you really have to have. You really have to believe that you can do it, right? You don't have to have, look, I don't have, you know, I don't come from money. I didn't go to the best schools. In fact, I didn't get my bachelor's degree until my 30s, right? Late 30s. So none of that stuff really comes into play. But what does come into play is your mindset, right? Your mindset is critical. And I'm going to ask you this question. Which of these 8 principles do you already practice in your own house? Go ahead and comment that below and let me know which of them do you practice and which one do you really need to work at. Anyway, my beautiful people, hope you enjoyed the message. I think this is really critical, but hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. But only subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. I don't need subscribers. Even though you hear me say that, I don't need subscribers. What I do need are subscribers that are going to engage with me, subscribers that are going to interact, are going to comment on my videos, subscribers that want to learn more about either gig work, about building wealth, or about e-bikes. If that's you, subscribe. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one.